Fantasy Formula 1 podcast. Today we're going to be discussing a new tier system that I'm going to be implementing when it comes to my evaluation of drivers going forward. And it's still a work in progress, but I've been kind of tiptoeing around it, and I really think I have a sort worked out, so we'll see how it goes. So just like military, we're going to use Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. Your Tier 1 drivers are valued at $20 million or above, and they have a return of investment 1.0 or more. I'll go into details here in a second. Tier 1, 20 million and above, with a return on that investment of 1.0 points per million. So every race, you need to be getting at least 20 points. Tier 2 is from 10 million up to 19.99, or 10 million up to 20, with it non-inclusive. And you need to be getting either a half point or as close to 1 as you can get return on investment for that in points per million. And then Tier 3 is 0 to 9.9999 million in cost, with a return on investment of 0 to 0.49. And the reason why we're doing this tier system is because we need different things from different tier drivers. For your top tiers, think Max Verstappen, think Lewis Hamilton, all right? We don't need, like, those. The Tier 1 drivers are the drivers you need to have, otherwise you're just going to lose. With Max Verstappen, anybody who did not want to have Max Verstappen on their team, whether for a moral principle or whatever, you were not competitive in 2023 if you didn't have Max Verstappen on your team and you didn't have Red Bull as a constructor. Sergio Perez, got it. You can, with McLaren and with Fernando Alonso, how they were operating, like there was a little bit of wiggle room there, but you had to have Max Verstappen, right? Yes, some people could probably have worked out with Lewis Hamilton at times, but in the end, Max Verstappen was so overtly dominant, you had to have him. That's like the big example I have for that year, for Tier 1. Tier 2, you need to think your Aston Martins, right? Think your McLarens. Think those drivers that started out in the 10, 11, $12 million and then start doing really well, and you start getting a lot of great return on investment with those drivers, and you needed to buy into them early so you could ride that success and start getting all those points at a relatively low cost. Because remember, you only have $100 million. So as soon as your $20 million drivers, you get 3 of them, well, now you don't even have enough money for a good constructor, right? And keep in mind, this is all talking talking drivers. This isn't talking constructors yet. Haven't gotten to constructors yet. So Tier 2 is your $10 to $20 million range, and your 5 to 1 non-inclusive points per million. And the Tier 2 is where all the magic happens, because that is where, like I said earlier, you get your McLarens, you get your Aston Martins, and that is where the drivers can really start to shine, right? That's where you start bringing in all those points for passing. That's where you have a back of the pack car that suddenly starts turning into, a middle of the top 10 car, and now suddenly you're getting all these points in for a very low investment. As soon as you get 30 points a race or 20 points a race off a $10 million investment, now you're getting 2 points per race per $1 million you spent. And the reason why it's important to get into that early is because the game will start to balance itself out. As soon as you have a Tier 2 team, like a $10 or $15 million team, and you start to do, or driver, and you start to do really well, their value is going to increase, and it will be harder for people to buy in. If you got McLaren at the beginning of the year, and I didn't, you got him for $11 million. If you want to get Lando Norris on your team, he would have cost you $11 million at the beginning of the year. If I waited until the last race to try and get Lando Norris on my team, he would have cost me just south of $20 million. So it's important with those Tier 2 drivers, just like Tier 1, it's important to get them and hang on to them and not let them go, because everybody who's going to do good is going to get them. Tier 2, it's important to get them and ride that success, and to guess right and to find those right people early. And that's why you have this Fantasy Formula 1 podcast. Hopefully we can help me and you do that. But that's what you're looking for those Tier 2 drivers. And then Tier 3 are the 0 to 10 million. Think your Haas's, think your like AlphaTauris, things like that. And the big thing you need from those is you're probably not going to get too many points from them race per race. They might get some races passing people. They might do some overtakes. They might increase in position 3 or 4 positions. But as soon as you're spending 4, 5, 6, 7 million on a driver and they get you 4, 5, 6 points per race, that is all you need from them. All right, that is perfect, because there's not enough money in the $100 million budget to get good constructors and all good to get tier 1 constructors and tier 1 drivers. There's not enough. 2023 was pretty easy because there was really only one dominant driver that everybody had to have. Everybody had Max Verstappen, everybody had Red Bull, and who won and who lost was just varied off of how you massaged everything else. But I really think that with 2024 coming up, your tier 2 drivers are where you really make or break your team, but you have to pick your tier 2 drivers where you make or break your team. But you have to pick great tier 3 drivers, because everybody's going to need at least 1 or 2 tier 3 drivers on your team. And as soon as they get you a steady state, 5, 6, 7 points every race, that is what you need. But as soon as you get 5 points 2 races in a row, and then they crash out in the third race, well, now after 3 races, you're negative 10. And somebody else who got 2 points per race for those 3 races is 6 points ahead of you. And then you extrapolate that for all 23 or 24, however many races they're going to have this season, it will matter. So everybody crashes out at some point, but you just can't have your... how about this? That's why, like Logan Sargent, right? He had a hard time crashing. Nick DeVries had a hard time crashing in 2023, and as soon as a great performance for them was 10 or 15 points, yeah, that was wonderful. That was fantastic. I think Logan Sargent, he got into the points once, and he got like a rock solid amount of fantasy points, and that was wonderful. The problem was the preceding and succeeding races, he went negative because he just had issues. So So that's how I'm going to do the different tiers, right? Your tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. You want to get tier 1, just to recap, tier 1, you need to pick it fast, pick it right. And then as that driver, like in 2023, for example, takes off this year, when you're looking at Lewis Hamilton, when you're looking at Max Verstappen, when you're looking at Sergio Perez, all of those drivers, like, you need to get them and get them early. Tier 2 drivers, you got to be careful, and hopefully as soon as certain teams start breaking out and drivers start doing well, you need to get on that bandwagon, and hopefully you can buy in while they're still affordable. And in tier 3, you just have to pick drivers that aren't going to cost you a whole lot of points, because as soon as you're 10 races in and your tier 3 drivers have only netted you, if they do, like I said, 3 races where they get 5, 1 race where they get 20, you will end up negative points. And it would have been really better for you to get a driver that just raced and came in 20th and got you 0 every race. Sometimes that would be better than just walking around with a negative points per million. Anyway, so that's like the quick down and dirty about what I'm wanting to do. I'm going to start using that tier system when it comes to these last few driver analysis we're doing. We got Sergio Perez, Valtteri Bottas, Yuki Tsunoda, and Zhou Guanyu are the last 4 we have before we have our first guest in the studio and start really diving into the nuts and bolts and teaching from ground zero how to get into that fantasy how to understand Formula One, how to get into the fantasy Formula One mindset, and how to pick a good team using the lessons from 2023 and to get ready for that 2024 rule drop that's going to be coming here next week. So I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something, and I will see you next time. Cheers.